Welcome to the Fellowship of the Ring, Paul, the first episode of 2025. I hope you all had a wonderful Yuletide and are looking forward to an exciting 2025 full of opportunity, health and happiness. I'm particularly smug this year because this is my first hangover-free 1st of January since 1985. So I'm very, very pleased with myself. I'd like to say that Christmas and the Yuletide period without alcohol was easy. It wasn't. But I think it says more about the strains that we put ourselves through to have a good time over Christmas than anything. The amount of sedation I've required in the past was quite alarming. I don't know about you, but I didn't have a great Christmas because I had a huge bout of flu, not man flu, real flu. And I can see now why so many fuckers died of it, like during the kind of Crimean War and Spanish flu and all of that kind of stuff, because it really is particularly horrible. Live on Instagram, I can see that people are joining us there. Hi, how you doing? I'm also live on YouTube, and if you want to join on the Google Meet, that's linked in the video description down below. So, Allan and Robbie, who are behind the camera, any New Year's resolutions?
I think practice more.
Practice more.
Yeah, practice saxophone more.
Yeah.
I used to do it a lot as a student and then fell out of the habit.
Yeah.
So I think back into practicing.
Yeah. I think it's incredible, isn't it? I think that there's something so utterly depressing about the it's almost like an arc. There was a point where I was actually really quite good at playing the keyboard in certain like limited styles, like as a funk player, as an improviser. I could play very quickly and do all sorts of tricks and stuff. And then when you stop playing so often, it's just so utterly depressing it's like, what? I used to be able to do that and now I can't.
I used to say to students when I was teaching, you plateau. So there's a point you'll practice and you'll never get any worse.
Right.
But you're also not as good as you were.
That's a very good point.
All the time.
Yeah.
So
you never go back to not being able to play.
Able to do it, but there's a point where you're like, I'm sure I was able to do this a couple of months ago and now I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. What about you, Robbie?
I think a few more guitar pedals this year. I didn't buy any last year.
That's not a resolution. I'm going to buy more guitar pedals.
Yeah. I'm going to stick to the weekly recommended units of alcohol and use any extra money that I was spending on guitar pedals.
Oh, very good, very good. What is the weekly recommended units of alcohol?
14.
14?
Which is about a pint a day.
Which is a pint a day of fairly average.
About 4% lager, yeah.
Oh.
I'm doing about triple that, I imagine, at the moment.
Right,
So, yeah.
and I guess the idea is not to do all 14 units in a single sitting.
Ideally not.
Yeah. I imagine that
Pace
doesn't.
yourself.
So not just guitar pedals, but left ear as well.
Well, so my New Year's resolution, I've got two. One is to learn to drive, which is, for a 53-year-old, I think that you need 2 lessons for every for every year that you are. Which basically means I should hopefully have passed my test at some point in October. But yeah, I'm quite looking forward to. And then something that I don't really talk about living in Scotland is what we have. Like, if you were to spend the same time on a motorway driving to Oxford from London, where you get to in Scotland is just it's God's country. So what I'm looking forward to doing is getting a beat up old car, but with a really good stereo in, and being able to get out onto the open road. There are some amazing roads as well, amazing drives. So I'm going to learn to drive. And the other thing is I'm going to discourage the word talent. I think the word talent is used as a mask for what is in fact devotion. And I'm coming up with a bit of a monologue about this, but I think the equation that equals devotion is dedication over time. And I think that what people do who are not prepared to be devoted to something is they use the word talent as if it's some kind of God-given or birth-given gift that some people possess and they do not. And therefore, they're unwilling to offer the devotion. And I think it was interesting. What's the name of that ginger-headed guy who plays guitar with the looper pedal? Is it Ed Sheeran? Yeah. Yeah, he's on a talk show playing him performing songs that he wrote when he was like 12, and he's fucking appalling. And I think that he touches on this thing of this idea of, no, it's not talent, it's about hard work and devotion. Charles, how are you, sir? Happy New Year.
Let me turn my mic on. Is my mic on?
Oh, it certainly is.
Oh, okay. Probably too loud. I'm
doing
well.
It sounds great. Did you have a good time?
Well, yes. I don't mind telling you that it was our 50th anniversary for our wedding.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. So apparently, as an actor, I passed the audition.
Definitely got the recall, at least.
I got the recall, exactly.
Anyone else who's online, can you mute your microphones? Is that Ethan?
Sorry.
That's okay. Charles, do you do New Year's resolutions?
Well, not really. Every day is a resolution. I mean, I recall a story about the American comedian George Burns. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he got to grow quite old. And I'm going to be 82 this year, and so I've been thinking about that, although I thought about it for years. But he was queried one day about he says, Mr. Burns, what do you do when you wake up in the morning? What's your first thought? And he said, I'm up. And I thought, yeah, that probably makes more sense than anything. So I resolved to be up. And then as the day comes, I, proceed with alacrity into whatever it is I think I've planned and then take care of other business. So, but it's a daily routine. I mean, I don't, I'm a Christian, so I get up and I pray a little bit and I read the Bible, and then I think about, people that I care about, like you. My wife and I pray for you all the time because I know you're battling. I've got my demons, you got yours, pal. So anyway, but every day is, I regard it as a gift. And I actually saw a little bit of the YouTube before I signed in, and somebody was talking about practicing.
Yes.
I don't remember which one of you.
It was Allan.
And that's exactly what I was thinking about this morning. If I have a resolution, it is related to that. I'm the beneficiary of having, probably spending too much money, thousands of dollars worth of software and equipment, and I'm going to spend more time practicing specifically on certain things. Your wonderful plugins, the company that you used to be with, their plugins. I use Dorico for writing, but I use it in a little different way. And you can share this with anybody you want in case they are wondering. While I can sit down, let's say I wanted to write a string quartet, I can sit down and I can notate a string quartet on Dorico. However, for my client in Los Angeles, I've told you about Megatracks.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of stuff that was drone related with rhythmic tracks, et cetera, and so forth. So I actually used Dorico, not for its notation ability, but I can sit down and just basically improvise anything. I don't care what the notes look like on Dorico. And actually, you can render it to audio. But most of the time, I'll take out all of the plugins, reverb, compression, equalization, whatever. So I'll just basically improvise because I'm a jazzer. I played a lot of bebop when I was young and stuff. So I'll just write like a 2-minute track, transfer the MIDI to, I use Studio One Pro, transfer it to that, and then do all the hijinks after that. And I don't know, somebody else can answer this, and maybe you can. When I just do MIDI on Personas and improvise, I don't have the same sensibility that I do when I see the notation. I can see the rhythms, the triplets, whatever. And where I'm not even really talking about the dynamics, just literally seeing the notes. Mm-hmm. It has a different effect on the way I write. So I'm going to practice more with Dorico and practice your plugins with. By the way, I love these new piano book things that you did. I downloaded, I experimented with them, and these kids that are doing these things are
just incredible.
I'm so grateful that I live in an era when I watch these young people do these things. This is just fabulous that they're coming along like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that, there's a lot of concern about screen time, this, that, and the other. And something I've certainly noticed with my young'uns, all three of them, is, they do a bit of consumption, and they'll watch a film on Netflix, they'll watch a film on YouTube, they'll watch a few TikToks for a bit, they'll have it in the background, they use it as a space to communicate with friends, but also if they want to be creative, it is just incredible what they can do. And what I'm seeing so often with these amazing things that they're working on is they're almost like gateway platforms into stuff that's really serious. So my eldest daughter, she's using Blender now, which is what CGI guys use. And she got into that because she started with some 3D stuff that she downloaded onto her iPad, and that's led into something else. So I think that, Charles, what's really exciting is for the every generation has these trailblazers and whether it be a director or an artist or whatever. And I'm just really looking forward to what they can do with these tools. I think it's going to be phenomenal by the time that they're, working age. Not just my children, but that generation. I think it's going to be fairly extraordinary. It's very interesting. Just reflecting back on what you were saying about that, different ways of interfacing with what you're inputting, I think is really, really interesting. And I do think, even if you don't plan to use live musicians, I do think actually, if you're laying down a string pad, actually voicing it is a really, really good exercise. Even if it's just identical presets, playing the different voices, because the minute you start separating them into voices, you start hearing them as these little sub-melodies and stuff. And I think that it really encourages you to introduce interest and to think of each voice separately, which is just another way of opening some more doors, as in OORS, not AWS, on your music. And I know of several people who will, depending on the application, decide that they whilst they have a keyboard controller and usually input stuff live and track by track, will sometimes actually orchestrate stuff on paper because it's just a different way of inputting. And I think it's a very valuable thing to look at. Before I move on, Charles, just one of my resolutions just before as you were coming on was to I'm gonna try and make the word talent unfashionable because I think it's used by people who don't recognise people's dedication and devotion to what they do as a means of explaining away someone's dedication and devotion. I just wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
As soon as you said that, the first thing I thought of, and I guess this is, I don't know if it's hearsay or a true story, about Pablo Casals, the great cello player. Mm-hmm. And apparently at one point, it was known that he practiced every day. And apparently at one point someone said, "Why do you practice?" And he said, "I'm trying to improve." And I thought, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
There was a very famous management guru, Edwards Deming, who actually was very helpful in post-war Japan, but he was an American, who created a system of quality control. And the précis is his singular. He had two things. He said, number one, don't tamper in the process of what you're creating for product, but always think in terms of constant improvement. And there's a distinction. And because quality control is not, you can't put quality control at the end of the production. You have to think of it in terms of it begins at the beginning of production. And so his premise basically is if you're going to do constant improvement, you think in terms of how can I prove from point one what's going to happen to the end of production for the product, whatever it might be. As opposed to, let's say we're talking about 16 bars of music. If you write something and you say, no. If you go into bar 9 and try to improve it, the antecedent bars might be damaged by this one little tampering thing that you do at bar 9. So by daunt is not the right word. If you will allow yourself to be strict to your process, then you would think, okay, I want to do this at bar 9, but in order to get there, I've got to improve. The constant improvement thing has to begin at bar 1. Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
And so going back to Casals, I'm sure was thinking, if I do whatever I'm not a cello player, but if I do, maybe what I ought to do is begin it here instead of here and bow it this way instead of that way or whatever. When I played the trombone, I did not have that discipline. I was young. I had a natural inclination for jazz. So even in 7th grade, I played my first gig. So they said 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was playing. And it's my fault. I'm not blaming anybody. I didn't have the discipline to really think, what's happening in this chart? As I got older, that improved. And I can't get in a time machine, but I realized over time I had to break that habit of knowing right away what I wanted to do, but disciplining myself to say, wait a minute, don't start playing until you really think it through, and then find out what the real beginning point is to build it to something marvelous instead of something like that ends up sounding like crap just because you were lazy.
Yeah.
Because we can all be lazy.
Yeah.
Now, I know you score films. I'm going to be scoring a film, I think in February, for a young man here. So I have the script. I want him to send me the footage. But I'm really, and I want the footage because of my acting. We've talked about this.
Yes.
I watch the actors. I say, okay, this guy's doing this, and maybe the music should be such and such. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to really just do the homework before, and he might say, well, I want to hear something right away. And I might give him something thematic, maybe 3 or 4 chords. But it's really, the quality control begins at point A. And if you write the whole piece and decide again at bar 9, I want to change that. Bar 9 affects everything that started at the beginning, and if bar 9 out is wonderful, but bar 9 back is terrible, you got to go back to bar 1 and say, I really want bar 9 to really get the people in there,
Yeah.
you have to improve it from there. Now, when you compose, do you do that, or you just kind of wing it?
Yeah, I do.
You work with briefs too.
No. I work to briefs. I work to the picture. I work to the different cuts. But I have found over the years that the best way to work is in a series of passes. And I totally agree that I find that it's very easy, particularly I think a lot of us get into music production and composition not just because of the music but also because of the tinkering. And I think it's very easy to tinker in areas that you're enjoying and stuff, and I think that what can happen is you can get very uneven scores. You can have scores that's very,
the tampering. That's the tampering problem.
Yeah, scores that are very detailed at some points, scores that are not so much at others. I think in a series of passes, you make sure that you elevate the entire thing. I think it's also really important that the thing that we are doing as media composers is helping the narrative, and point A, point B, and point Z are equally important, because people are going to leave the theatre or switch Netflix off or whatever it is after hopefully point Z. So I think it's so easy to be completely attached and obsessed with the first act, and then by the time you get to the third act, you're rushing through it. But I think by operating in a series of passes, you elevate everything, and you are also using the advantage of artistic hindsight, because you have got to point Z in the narrative to be able to then think of that context and where you're going to use a Spinal Tap term, where your 11 is, so that you know where 1 is at the beginning, but also where 6 is in the middle. I think that these are very important points.
This is the corollary. This is the corollary of what I was saying.
No, totally, Charles, absolutely. Before I move on, Charles, have you seen the Florida Project film?
The Florida Project?
It's called The Florida Project. I watched it last night. And from an acting point of view, Charles, I think you're in for a real treat there. It's absolutely sensational film. And if anyone has seen that, let me know. But I would humbly recommend it. It's a little bit like a Gus Van Sant movie, but it has a narrative that's very much buried in something that I would refer to as a tone poem, largely improvised. But it is staggering, and I think it's shot on film, and it looks extraordinary as well. Ethan,
you want to have your person provide a link to it, or some kind of an IMDb link?
It's just called the Florida Project. And it's got what's that guy's name from Platoon? Fantastic actor, Willem Dafoe in it. But he's the only kind of face, so to speak. It's largely a child cast, and the director has got from them some pretty incredible performances. So something I
found it on the internet.
Yeah, I'd really recommend it. Hey, Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Christian. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How was your Christmas and New Year?
Yeah, it was good. I've been working really hard in Logic Pro, so I've not really been watching any Christmas telly or much of it, but a few things.
Good for you. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, my only resolution would be to be successful in music again, really. Yeah.
And what are you kind of making some plans there? You know, are there things that you think you could do differently that will help you achieve that success or that goal?
Yeah, I'll say the one thing is it's quite hard these days to actually get yourself out there. I'm working very hard on the music, but with the online community, it's very hard to get fan base. I'm not talking as a composer at the moment. I'm talking as a musician, a producer, in the pop world, really. Yeah. But I hold myself dear to composing. You're one of my idols, you know that.
Oh, thank you, Ethan. God. Ethan, I mean, I think that's something that I think is as true now as it ever was, is that getting yourself out there is literally still that. It's getting yourself out of the front door. And I think that if there was a couple of things that I would really suggest, a year, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, I would have said, you need to live in certain areas, this, that, and the other. I do think location still is a factor. It's not fundamental. I think I lost my first gig because I'm based in Edinburgh since moving to Edinburgh 10 years ago. Ironically, I lost that gig about a week ago simply because the guy who I would have been collaborating with wants to be with me at every step of the way and wasn't convinced that I was basically going to abandon my family for 6 weeks. He was right. But that's quite a kind of a rare thing. However, I do think getting out there and getting to know people and being seen, I think is really, really important. I think that there are, we do these composer walks and stuff like that. And when I actually meet people who then introduce themselves as, hi, my name's Steve, I'm Steve92 Blue, which is their online handle. It's like, wow, this is you, you're a person. But this is a collaborative business, and it is always going to be about relationships. So I think it is very tempting to try and work the algorithm, but everyone is. And I think actually just making that effort to whether it be seminars, I tell you a fantastic thing that I would put in your diary, and what I would do. This is I'm going to say a bad word, but if you're doing a business plan for the year, what I would work into your budget is some trips to wherever you can get to, whether it be London or whatever, to attend some of these seminars, festivals, weeks. My favorite is Soundtrack Cologne. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a very loving group of people. There's lots of lovely beer and frankfurters and all of that stuff, alongside small seminars, people talking. But basically, it's a social gathering. And when people say, "Oh, it's just a bit of a jolly," it's like, yeah, it's a bit of a jolly, and that's how you get to know people. And that's how you become seen to be. Oh, I know Ethan. He's part of this thing. So I think it's really important. It's definitely the thing that I missed out on by not going to college. Just simply having a group of people that you go out into the marketplace together. But I this idea that there is some kind of online labor market, I don't see any examples of that. There are some forums where people make friends and get together and this, that, and the other, but I still think the physical interaction is still really important. So that'd be something I would suggest doing. And again, this idea of doing a business plan, it's, I would say if it's, and I'm only projecting my own attitude towards this onto you, Ethan. But if it was, if it was the choice between spending 500 quid on a little Moog thing or going to Soundtrack Cologne, I think that long term you probably think that the Soundtrack Cologne trip was money better spent. I know that we're not.
Where is Ethan located?
Yeah, sorry, Charles. I was just about to say that. I'm located in Northampton in the UK.
Which is in the Midlands, is it not?
Yeah, home of Alan Carr.
Exactly. So you are commutable to London from there, and East Midlands Airport will take you to various parts of Europe and stuff like that. So I do think that what we save in not living in expensive places like LA and London and New York, you just have to kind of maybe make that extra effort to go to those different things. A lot of these things are free. I think a really good example of someone who for a period of about 3 years, I saw her at every single one of these seminars, of these events, of these festivals, of these conferences is a lady called Nainita Desai, who is now doing everything. And she simply became just part of the, oh God, I hate the word scene, part of the community. And so I think that's something that you have to do. And I dare I say it, and Ethan, again, I'm just talking about my own situation. I think it's very easy to be a legend in your own living room or your own studio, whatever it is, and to feel, why isn't the internet finding me? And I think that you've kind of got to go out there and find people. The other thing that I think is absolutely crucial, and it's something I've heard several people talk about online recently, and I totally agree with, is that when people need help, this is when they can help you. When people... and that is, I think, a real way into the industry is to assist others. And the best way of being the first in line for that help is to offer up your facility as a human being. What can you bring? What can you help with? Even if that's, listen, I make a really good cup of tea and I'm a great sounding board, whatever. I think bringing something to the table, so often we get so many emails in going, I'd love to come to work for you guys. Can you get me a visa? Can you find me a flat? I'm not joking. And it's just like, this sounds like quite hard work on our part. Whereas it's like, I've noticed that your 3D modelling for your the boxes that you make for your bundles are a bit shit. Guilty. I'm quite good at 3D modelling. I'm quite good at Blender. Can we offer some help? That is going to get a response.
Yeah, I'm not so great at that myself. I've tried a little bit of that in After Effects, the 3D modelling. But I had a desktop iMac, and I've only had an M1 since when was it? 2022, and it's only been since 2022 is when I've been able to mix up to like 150 tracks, and I consider myself advanced in Logic Pro now. But for one thing, I don't have the papers for it, the certificates. I've actually contacted a guy that used to teach me in Logic Pro called David Tobin. I don't know if you know him. Does a lot of stuff for Audio Network.
Sure.
This guy from Northampton. Let's get to this point. I've explained something and I don't know what I'm going on about. I struggle with people, but then I'm great at music.
No, but that's fine, Ethan. And I don't think anyone's going to judge you in your interpersonal abilities. I mean, some people I've met who are hugely successful, don't feel massively comfortable. You'll always spot the composer at cast and crew screenings because they'll always be the person standing on their own, not knowing how to mix and stuff. But when you do get together with a bunch of like-minded people, and we are drawn into technology and into working in small little sheds and all of this kind of stuff, there will be so many similarities. There will be so much similar neurodiversity, dare I say it, that kind of stuff, that you will meet.
Your point there. Sorry to
that's right.
to butt in there, but that's why I've not got out there and met anyone, is because I've been so indulged in technology.
Yeah.
I was a latecomer. See, I'm now 44, and I didn't start using computers until 2009.
Yeah, but
but since then.
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think it's something that we hide behind, and it's something that I'm really, really cautious of when I'm doing like reviews or talking about stuff like this. Is you don't need any of this shit. Really, it is about just offering a pair of hands. Really, my assistant Theo, I met in the backfield, and he's just struck me as a nice guy. Turns out he's a fantastic guitarist, and he's very good at some things. Some things he really doesn't have much experience at. And for me, as someone who works with him or employs him, part of the week, I work to his strengths. I try and teach him how to do stuff that he doesn't know how to do. And then there's a hole for other people to fill in. But anyway, I mean, it's just the thing that I would suggest, Ethan, is this idea of trying to get an online presence and all of that kind of thing. Yes, it's important, but I still think if you want to make it, particularly in composition, this, that, and the other, or even just want to see if it's what you want to do, it's about going out and having conversations. The difficulty with these kind of forums, the difficulty with Zoom meetings and this, that, and the other, is they're highly limited. And in fact, I find the point at which human intercourse becomes useful is usually after the first hour of talking. Problem is, we have these meetings, they last an hour, nothing is achieved. It'll be those early hours in the morning, or the late hours rather, in Cologne over a beer, where you'll get to some real nuts and bolts. And I absolutely am certain, regardless of how comfortable you feel around people and this, that, and the other, that those kind of activities, you get more used to it, and you'll start spotting similar faces, and that's something well worth doing. Listen, Ethan, I'm going to move on to Mr. Mark Taylor. How are you doing, sir? Sorry, Charles.
I want to interject. But I want to interject very quickly. You said, what can you bring to the table for everybody else? And you have talked about we could create samples, etc. But something I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to put my email here. As you know, I narrate a lot of audiobooks, and a lot of them are thrillers and mysteries. And sometimes people, composers, think, I don't have any ideas. So I am perfectly willing, if you email me, I can email you a chapter from a thriller, and you can just listen to it and say, gee, if I had to write the music for this, how would it go? If you're interested. That's all I'm going to say, and I'll put my email here.
Thanks, Charles. That's really fantastic. Mark Taylor, how are you doing, sir?
Hello. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Happy New Year.
Thanks, mate. Did you have a good one?
Yeah. Yeah, it was all right. Yeah. I've actually this has been happening since Christmas, but I've actually decided to start making a little album.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I decided. I think around December, I wanted to take a break from all the projects that I'm working on, and then a random idea came into my head, and it was just, I want to work on a steampunk album, and that's what I basically decided to do. So yeah, I'm not even kidding. Before I joined the meeting, I actually had a file open that has one of the tracks that I'm working on for it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing that, actually.
Great. That's
the
fantastic, Mark. Well, best of luck with that, and stick at it. And I'm seeing more and more activity on the Crow Hill Network. So stick some demos in there and get some feedback. And I think that again, what Charles was talking about, these wanting to improve oneself. Charles has put up his email there. And what we will do is put that in the video description below the video. Charles, tell us to take it down if you get inundated with nutters. So Mark, I think that the one thing that's really good to do is to get feedback and to use people as sounding boards. If you look into the history of the Muse, it's a way of if you feel someone's going to listen to it, you will listen to it differently. And I think that's something well worth doing. We're also joined here by Mr. Dale Williams. How are you doing, sir?
Fantastic. Sorry about that.
Where are we speaking to you from?
I am from Texas, United States.
Fantastic. Whereabouts in Texas?
Technically Weatherford, which is about 20 miles west of Fort Worth.
Okay, so that's kind of Dallas-y area.
Yeah, it's further west of. So it's Dallas, and then you hit Arlington, Fort Worth, and then Weatherford's kind of scooting on down the way.
I've never been to Texas, and I really, really want to go. I have a feeling I'm gonna like it.
It's not bad. It is not bad. I've traveled the United States, and it's one of if you can tolerate the summers here, it's a wonderful place.
So I'm just because it's like weather porn. What's the weather like there at the moment?
Currently, it is. It's actually cold. It's 40s. So we're Fahrenheit here. So I know y'all are a little different up there, but yeah.
Did you hear that they cancelled Hogmanay here in Edinburgh this year?
I did not.
Yeah, the winds were so high they thought it was going to be dangerous, so they cancelled it. And basically, this is maybe not internationally commonly known, but basically Christmas was illegal in Scotland until I think it was 1953, until they made it a national holiday. I can't remember the reasoning behind it, but basically it was not officially celebrated in Scotland until the 1950s, which is why in Scotland they have two national holidays on both New Year's Day and the day after. And I think it's for that historical reason, but I think there's also a hangover purpose to it as well up here. But yeah, they cancelled it, which was a bit sad. So it was a very, very quiet night here.
Yeah, that'd be terrible for me. This is by far my favorite holiday season.
And Dale, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Christian, I'm not a big resolution person. I kind of treat every day as a gift, and every day is a new day. And if you're making progress, you're doing better than you were yesterday. So I'm not a big resolution. Obviously, I set goals. I'm a business guy, so I own several businesses, and music is more of a hobby. And just business goals. And I really been working on an album, seems like for 10 years. So we've really, me and the lads are hopefully going to wrap it up this year. But, kids and life just happens.
Of course it does. Yeah. Charles, you touched on this. I've been going through a process which has been very interesting. I don't make any bones of the fact that I'm a atheist, and I would say atheist in the sense that theism is something that I struggle with somewhat. But I've been having to deal with this word higher power a lot, and treating each day like it's absolutely sacred. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think that a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of weight behind certain words, and this idea of higher power, creates this kind of hierarchy and stuff. And And something that I'm very interested in is a broader power, because what I've been doing is working with a larger group of people on something totally aside from music. I've been getting over working through an alcohol addiction. And I think that what I'm seeing is this quite extraordinary thing, which is strength. Strength is a very rare form of energy, because if you give people strength, you make yourself so much stronger. And I would say if I had a hope for this year for me, it is to offer that strength out more, because I feel that it makes you feel so much stronger. And I think it's a very rare kind of human, a little bit like spreading joy, a little bit like a yawn can make everyone else yawn. There is something about offering strength out and how much that strengthens oneself. I had a brain hemorrhage when I was 25, and I do treat every day like an absolute gift. But something I am guilty about is looking too far into the future. And I think it's very good to, people who do have faith some often will pray in the morning. And a lot of the people I'm working with at the moment will, whether you call it praying or meditating or just having a moment to look at the day, I think is a really way forward. I don't want to get too deep here, but. Yeah, I think that I've got kind of quite a lot of difficult stuff to work through this year, and not to do with the alcohol, to do with like business and all of that kind of stuff. And I think something that I really am looking into before the year really kicks off on the 6th is how I want each day to be. And if I want that day to be full of conflict and worry and anxiety, and what I can do personally to just help the people I can help to make them feel stronger, so I feel stronger, and just to be as happy as possible, every night when I go to bed and every day when I wake up in the morning. I think that I talk so much about careers in music and this, that, and the other. And I think something I haven't spoken enough about is, what do you want from life? What do you want your life to be? Because so many of us are incredibly hedonistic, nihilistic, dare I say it. So many of us think that it's about the number of hours you put in. You should consider yourself lucky to be working in music, even if you're working yourself into an early grave. I think none of these things ring true to me anymore at 53 years old. I think it is about what you want to get from life. I think that we tend to aim always to the top of the pyramid. We want to be the top dog at this, that, and the other. And I think that there's a lot in life that can be got from, again, returning to this idea of being a helping hand. It's a collaborative art, it's a community, and there are ups and downs, and we all have our moments in the light and we have our moments in the dark. And I think that just having a moment to reflect on making every day brilliant, I think then has your net gain at the end of the year is that much better. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off into a deep spiritual.
Well, Christian, you say something really interesting. So I've been in the industry my entire life. So as a child, I'm 40. And so as a teenager, I was touring, going into my 20s, playing shows. And so I am a home builder. I own a construction company and several other businesses kind of around that. And one thing that's changed in my industry a lot, which was new to my business world, that's always been a part of the music world, you've touched on it several times, I've heard in this meeting, is collaborative. And what we're starting to see in my business is, instead of everybody being such a competitive nature and always fighting to be the top dog, we're better at numbers, right? So I'm in a very populated area, and there's plenty to go around. So it doesn't hurt to throw one of my co's, a lead per se. And 5 years ago, all that information was held very dear, and not in a collaborative state and willing to share. And so, yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I think it's really important, and I think it needs to go further than music. I think in businesses, a collaborative community, it's easier to do business when you have a group that you can lean on and be comfortable with that can relate in your own space, instead of always having to be in this competitive nature of tit for tat and fighting. So yeah, I agree with that.
I think that I totally agree, Dale, and I think that's something that I've really enjoyed by moving out of the comfort zone that was London and the almost infinite pool of talent that you could just literally call on. You didn't need to know these people. You didn't need to be friends with them, and naturally you get to know them and you get to be friends, and you return to that same cellist and this, that, and the other. But what I did by moving to Edinburgh is, and it took a while, is I realised that I actually had to seek out collaboration, seek out people I could work with. And then, because the talent pool isn't as broad and as endless up here, playing to those strengths. And I think that has been really, really fantastic. I made a Taylor Swift cover just before Christmas.
Yeah, I saw that.
Thank you.
It was very cool.
And what that was playing to the strengths of the people that were available to come into the shed and record and stuff like that. And I think that in itself is something that is empowering. Is that the right word? It's something that gets results that are good but also surprising. Instead of going, if only it could be like this, of going, well, what are you good at? And what can we do with that? And that's what's so exciting about music in particular and that's what's great about getting a group of people together, and someone plays the hurdy-gurdy and someone plays the spoons or whatever. It's like, what can we do to combine these elements into something extraordinary? And from that, I think you get these sparks, these tensions that spark something new and interesting. And I think that's very, very exciting.
Do you find it more rewarding?
Yeah, I really do. Yeah. Because instead of trying to control everyone and everything, instead of it always being what I hear in my head, what I'm doing is I'm going, okay, you play the flute, it sounds like a flute, but you don't use diaphragm vibrato, you use finger vibrato. The end result is going to surprise me. And I think it's taken a while to overcome, dare I say it, the disappointment of expectation of, I want it to sound like this. I want it to sound exactly like this sample. And actually, for that person to bring something into it that elevates it, not only because it's a live player, but because it's an individual. And I think that that is something that I would say, never sit behind the technology you think you don't have, never sit behind the skills you think you don't have. And, to Mark, to Ethan, to yourself, Dale, people wanting to go out there, I think it's finding people that you can collaborate with you that lift you up. Again, you're doing those passes, that A to Z, that help you lift you up and make you think differently about your music, or whether it's the way that you're working with Dorico, this, that, and the other. You can see I'm putting a ribbon on this. I think that is a great way of looking at stuff. I just think music will never be worse if you collaborate with people. I think that it'll always be at least different. And I think that we're so conditioned by technology into going into the box, and it allows us to be insular and all of this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's what what music's about. Mr. Taylor, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so you were saying about collaborating and all that. The funny thing is, I actually have been with the steampunk album in particular. I actually have been collaborating with like a couple of by a couple of musicians. I mean, one because she plays violin. Basically, I asked her to record like these weird Danny Elfman-esque effects, aleatoric effects, and I basically decided to code them into a decent sampler. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, I do definitely, I do agree with all that. Also, I also send my music to a friend who is like, I'd consider him a mentor. We've known each other for 5 years now because it's 2025. But yeah, and yeah, no, I agree with all that. I don't know if what I'm saying now is going out around in like a massive maze or whatever. I'm not very good at explaining things, but yeah.
But that's what's good about discourse is you work through different ideas, and you know, something I've found just in the way that I work, because of my controlling nature. I have this guy Theo who assists me, and I collaborate with, and I co-write with, and he produced a lot of that stuff that I did on that Taylor Swift cover, because I find it really interesting when you let people get on with it and just bring something to the table, and then you have a new palette of colours to work with. Some people like to be there and work with the collaborators that you're working, and I'm just finding that I'm a little bit controlling, I'm a little bit insular, and what happens when someone who I really trust, Theo has really good taste, when he works with those people, I get more. And I think that this is something that's amazing about the internet, is you can almost do these like chain letters where you just send some stuff to someone and it comes back with some new stuff. It's how I worked with Harry Gregson Williams on a few films that I helped him on. He sent me some stuff and I sent some stuff back, and then I went to the cinema and I saw what he did with it. It doesn't have to be just someone sitting in front of your notes and playing them. It can be someone taking your notes and taking them on a step. And on that note, I'm going to sign off, and we'll be back not the same time. We're going to do this every Thursday, you know, hopefully back for more. I'm going to really push this podcast this year, because I think that there are so many really valuable and important conversations to be had still, and I really enjoy and thank everyone who's joined us today and everyone who's listened in. And if anyone's going to NAMM this year, I'm hoping to hit NAMM as well. So maybe we can organise a Crow Hill / Piano Book / Audio Inc. / nutty composers who don't like talking to people get together of some sort out in Los Angeles, not Anaheim, because I hate it down there. And if you haven't seen the Florida project, that would be something I hugely recommend as the best thing I've watched this Christmas. So to Charles, to Mark, to Dale, to Ethan, thanks to Allan, who's producing, and Robbie, who's done the video camera work today, and to everyone who's joined us. Hopefully see you again next week, if not the week after. Bye-bye.